Hey, hello, test. There it goes. Hey, we got a couple went to down to 406. There's one of them. So we're going to give them about 5 more minutes. We'll get started about 10 after 9. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get this started. Chairman Jaspers has agreed to do our prayer, so I'm gonna kick it over to Chairman Jaspers. What, you 18?
Thank you. If you'd all bow our heads for a moment, please. Heavenly Father, thank you for letting us be together and give us safe travels and also travels home this evening. Please look after us, bless us, open our minds to listen to this new knowledge for some of us, and help make us wise and help us make us cooperative to do what's best for the citizens of Georgia. Thank you for this meeting. Amen.
Amen. So we're here to talk about artificial intelligence. I'm reminded of a time when we went from the horse and carriage to an industrial revolution, and that leap in technology, and what that meant to our country and our state. And we've long passed that, and we're looking at what is technology today. The purpose of this particular hearing isn't necessarily to dive deep into policy, but to get a general understanding of what artificial intelligence is, what it isn't. I've got a lot of questions. Obviously the biggest one I get from my constituents back home is, is this artificial intelligence stuff like Skynet, right? Is the Terminator coming? And I have to explain to people that's not necessarily what this is. So we're excited to have these presenters today. Please feel free to ask any questions. Again, whenever my belief is when you run, when you're all trying to work together, as this committee is, to figure out what we're going to do for policy for the state, the first thing we have to do is be able to speak the same language and kind of have the same basic understanding of what is and what isn't. So please take your time today, ask plenty of questions. We've got some great presenters from Accenture, Georgia Chamber, Georgia Production Partnership, Heritage Foundation. And I think it's to be a productive meeting. This is, like I said, the first of several. So we'll just get right into it. Our first speaker is Mr. Patrick Moore with Accenture, speaking on Gen AI in the public sector.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for just calling on me real quickly. I just want to let the committee know about this gentleman that we have before us today and his legendary past in Pickens County. Patrick was the longtime spelling bee champion for Pickens County. And we giggle when we say that, but he really was a legend, and his family is a legend in that world. And had great parents, and they were just leaders in my community in Jasper, and we're so very proud of Patrick and his family and what they've accomplished and the contributions they've made to Pickens County, and I just wanted to brag on him just a minute.
Thank you much for that. I'm done for the day. I'll see y'all later. I'll end on the high note. No, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and it's great to be back in front of friends and learned so much from you and others, and for what you just said, I'll make sure that the chicken cooking trophy ends up back in your living room in the very near future, so I appreciate all of that. Well, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much for your time here today. Patrick Moore, I am a principal director with Accenture. Accenture is a global consulting and strategy and technology company. I'm responsible for our public sector business in the state of Georgia. And for us, public sector is K-12, higher ed, state and local, and nonprofit. And what we try to do is we try to help organizations with the intersection of human ingenuity and technology. And there's a lot of the human element that we're going to be talking about today with Gen AI. My whole career has been in government and technology. Worked on Capitol Hill many moons ago, worked for Sonny Perdue as his state CIO, and since then I've been in the private sector working in the consulting world, but also with governments at all levels, local, federal, state. So this is a place where I'm familiar. I love to help governments improve. I love to help governments find new ways to use technologies, and really appreciate the opportunity today to talk with you all about this and welcome all the questions that you might have. I believe the introduction was perfect, and I wanted to start with some very high-level principles just to frame the conversation. First of all, what the technologies we're talking about here Gen AI, generative artificial intelligence, it's real. This isn't something that's smoke and mirrors. It's not something that's just a bunch of hype. There's plenty of hype around it, but it's real. And we're seeing it being used on a daily basis, and we're seeing its use cases accelerate. And so part of the challenge is understanding what it is and understanding how to use it in a legal and ethical way. And so skipping to the next point, it is real. You will see more of that today. I think everybody has probably seen examples of its use. Maybe you've even played with it a little bit with some of the apps that are available to the public today. And then its impact on organizations and individuals is going to be profound. It really will be. I've seen a lot of technology trends over the years. This one's the most changing and transformative that I can remember, and there's a large community saying the same thing. A lot of folks much smarter than me, much more in tune with how the technology physically works. There's a lot going on with this technology, and understanding it is very important. And then one point I should have added, and this is true in cases of technology always, it's not a silver bullet. It's not magic. It's not suddenly going to solve all of our problems. It's a tool that can be effectively used to help deliver services better, that can help corporations improve their efficiencies, that can help individuals in their daily jobs. But it's not going to solve those problems for us. There's very much a human element. There's still humans that are the ones that are creating the programming, creating the way that the data is used inside the systems. So as we talk about Gen AI in whatever setting, whether it's a policy setting or whether it's in its use, its applicable use in an organization, it's important to keep in mind there are no silver bullets. The business has to drive what technology does, and the outcomes that are created for individuals, human beings, are what needs to be the primary question anytime you're using any type of technology. So just a little bit of level setting there. Some of these slides, probably most of them, are going to have more words on them than I would normally like. I think that's part of just how we are all starting to process the way artificial intelligence is working and how to communicate the technologies. As a corporation, we've made an initial investment of $3 billion in the technology, and this is in people, it's in understanding the tools that are available in the public space, and it's in helping put pieces together so organizations can understand how to use it. The whole point there being this is very real to us, and a lot of the partners we work with in the technology world, we work with everybody, Microsoft, AWS, you name it. We're seeing a lot of activity from all of them in the same front. But this is important to Accenture as a corporation. It's important to our clients, and we're showing that by the types of investments we're making. So there's going to be a little bit here. I am working off of a PDF, so that might mean some of the texts are not going to show up here. Yeah, it might be a little bit of a challenge with the PDF here, but we'll do the best we can. So what is generative AI? And there's some terminology in here that we want to spend a little time talking about, but generative AI is the use of data inside these models that we're calling, and the industry calls, large language models. And what is that? Basically, it's a big database filled with language, filled with data points that can be drawn from in order to create a response. So consider all of the information available on the internet and being able to use all of that information to create a response to a question that you might have about whatever it is. How do I go and find a service at the Department of Human Services? Where can I find a box of macaroni and cheese tomorrow morning? And the response you get back is not a list like you would normally see in a search engine. It's written in natural language, and if the models are working well, it can give you precise instructions on how to go find a thing in a way that's understandable. And so the promise of that means that if you're trying to navigate a complex organization like government, being able to ask a simple question and get an extensive response, it doesn't require you to go to multiple websites, or doesn't require you to click on links, or to even know what department inside an agency provides a service. Suddenly that becomes a very real application, and a really incredible application of this new technology. So scrolling down a little bit here, trained on massive amounts of literature to learn words and sentences and their meaning in context. So this is what blew everybody's mind back in November when ChatGPT came out. ChatGPT is an application, kind of like anything that you would use on your phone. ChatGPT is using one of these large foundational models that it built. It's basically a lot of publicly available information to create these responses that you're getting when you're using ChatGPT. So but what it's doing is it's trained to recognize certain patterns of speech. It's trained to recognize the types of questions you're asking, and then it can go and find the type of answer based on what you're asking it. So let's say, for instance, you were to ask ChatGPT, I need to ask my teenager to go wash the car. How will my teenager respond to me? You can ask it that, and it will send you a response, and you can say, and please write the response in the way that a teenager would write the response. And it will come back to you with an answer, and it will say, like, I'm not going to wash your car, not today, I've got better things to do. And it will write it out in exactly the way that you would expect a teenager to do it. And the reason it's doing that is that that word teenager has been trained inside the model to point to certain dialects, the way that you put a comma after a particular word. It's telling what the model should go and look at, and the model's then trained to produce an answer based on that input. So that's kind of the high-level view of how this stuff is working underneath. And then they use this is where it starts to get even more technical, using inference to process input text speech and generate these replies based on learned patterns. So learned patterns, this is where the human aspect comes in. You're programming these patterns. You're telling the system, the computer, what to look for, and then it's putting out an answer. So you could have a case where the patterns you're asking it to look for are wrong. And then as the system gets more data, it can correct if it's programmed the right way, and it can get trained to change the way it's responding to a thing. So that's where this is all kind of blowing everybody's mind. And we've all seen a lot of the headlines around ChatGPT, how easily it can write. You can type in and say, write me an essay on Shakespeare's use of whatever in Hamlet, and I need it in 5 pages. I need 3 points to be made. I want 4 paragraphs, and I want a conclusion like this, and I want it written as if Stephen King were the author. All right, and it will spit out something like that for you. And so you can, and there's all kinds of fun things you can do with ChatGPT. You can ask it to build travel itineraries. You can ask it to do so many different things that are a lot of fun. What we're finding, and what everybody's still finding, is it's not always right. And so there are plenty of use cases where it will just go and make things up because it's been trained to create an output based on what goes in. And sometimes it doesn't quite understand it because it hasn't learned that particular output, because it hasn't been trained to learn that particular output. So there are some cases where there was a lawyer that tried to write an opinion using ChatGPT or file a brief on ChatGPT. This was in the news. Y'all are all nodding your head. And so went into ChatGPT, write this brief for me, wrote a brief, sounded great, sounded just like a lawyer wrote it. And then upon additional analysis, the half of it was all bunk. It was just made up. ChatGPT just made stuff up because that's what it was trained. It was trained to produce a thing that's being asked to produce. So these are some of the negative aspects of ChatGPT and these large language models that we're all learning about right now. So we'll move to the next one. Yeah, and so there's definitely some images missing here, but these are just some of the examples of what ChatGPT can do. It can generate text, it can create images, generate music, generate videos, design products. And we have some examples in here. I'm sure you've seen some examples on the internet. One of the more famous ones was the Pope wearing the puffer jacket, completely fake, completely made up by Gen AI. And I think one of the things that we're learning as we're all getting educated on this is that when we talk about Gen AI, it's not this big cloud of stuff. There are all sorts of applications now being created, and understanding what those applications are and knowing how to use them and piece them together is part of how you use it and how you need to navigate Gen AI. And that's part of where we're trying to help our clients, is not just understanding what it is, but also in the marketplace, understanding all the different pieces you can use to put together, to use it productively, to use it in the right way. Okay, good. This one's all here. And And so when you talk about creative expression, when you talk about its use in media, it's being used everywhere. It's being used to create movies. It's being used to create code. And code, this is an area a lot of work is being done right now. You've got to train these models well. You're seeing corporations, working with this in a place that's kind of offline. There's not a lot of official, you can use ChatGPT to write your code, but there's a lot of experimentation going on with code right now. And that's an area where it's really evolving quickly. Images, talked about that already. Text is where these language models are the most advanced. It's easiest to scrape that kind of information from the internet, to pull it from the internet, and it's easiest to begin to tie it together and create sentences and train AI to do things with text. We've seen ChatGPT do very well on the LSAT, do very well on the MCAT, do very well on the SAT. So these are, again, these crazy use cases where just within a couple of months we're already seeing this technology in many ways think like we're thinking, because that's what it's trained to do. So this I always find this a fun example. So that the image in the middle of the screen is described by the prompt next to it. 1960s woman with brown hair on a New York street in a white dress. All right, well, what if we want to modernize that picture? What if we want to make it more current? Well, you type in a prompt, and that prompt is what you see below. So this was an actual prompt. 1960s street-style fashion photo capturing a beautiful 30-year-old woman. I won't read the whole thing. You can see the description and the words being used to the level of a white lace Gucci gown. And careful composition emphasize the dreamy and romantic elegance of the gown. So this is the image that's produced. And it's produced on the words used to describe what you want that image to be. Starting with the basis point, Gen AI can do it. So you get beyond the text, you start to get into images, and you can see how powerful Gen AI can be. And now you apply that in creative settings, you can see how cool and fascinating and incredible that application can be. Yes, sir.
So, Patrick, I get that all the thing, but her face, is that a generated face, or is it taking a face that saw somewhere in a search and using that person's face as a...
Yep, good question. So the way you see this work usually is the first face is an original, and then what it will do, what these programs will do for images, it will go out and it will search a database of faces, and it will compile an image, and it will create an image based on what its scan is of the universe. So like you're using text, and you're saying, say this like a teenager, it will go out and look at this universe of sentences that are like a teenager. This does something similar, but it's doing it with graphics.
It wouldn't be able to identify that a person in existence from that. It would be a combination.
Right, that would be, that one I believe, that specific one, I do believe that is a generative face. So that's not an individual who you can go and say, this is Sally. It's somebody who is made up by the computer.
Okay, thank you.
Now, but then you can take the Pope and say, put a puffer jacket on the Pope, and that's the Pope. And
Right.
and you can see that it's, so, but I kind of get where you're going here, so I know we'll probably get into this in a little bit. Yeah. So, we got to be realistic about the dark side, and I think that we're very concerned about this, and we know that it's part of the reality of how Gen AI can be used and how it is being used. And we're spending a lot of time with our clients talking about the legal and ethical use, and we have our own guidelines internally, just even as we talk to individuals and companies and governments about this use, how we go and talk about it, because it's a really big deal. And it's everything from cybercrime, deepfakes, bias. You've heard all of these words at some point in the press, I'm sure. The implications here as you consider policy get into, what if there is somebody using Gen AI to create, a mock-up of a Georgia government agency or something like that, which it's real given where this technology is going. But plenty of headlines around here. These are all These are all examples that you've read in the media. Houston couple scammed as thieves used Gen AI to clone their son's voice. So they called in with their son's voice saying, you know, I need money or I'm in trouble. And that can be done. We have one of my colleagues recently recorded a video, and it's out on LinkedIn. It's publicly available. But he said the Pledge of Allegiance when he was recording into a microphone, and then we asked ChatGPT to we need you to describe how ChatGPT can help health agencies. I believe was the example, and I want you to do it in 5 languages. So next thing it does is it generates a video of him, mouth is moving, he's saying the Pledge of Allegiance, but what's coming out are the paragraphs and the sentences that we asked ChatGPT to say. It did it in English, did it in Hindi, did it in Spanish, and 2 more. But the point being, that's the power of it. It can even take the language and it can translate just based on the voice that the computer heard, and it sounded just like him. And by the way, he doesn't speak Spanish. So these are some of the creative ways. There are also some of the areas where you can see that policy-wise, you've got to really think through these things and what the principles are in its use. There is an ongoing debate over the impact of jobs. This is an age-old debate with technology. Everybody's concerned and has been what's going to happen when a new technology rolls around. We're having the same conversation inside Accenture. And what we're seeing is that it's going to make it easier for human beings to spend more time on the things that really matter. So let's take an example of writing an essay. You can go into ChatGPT and you can ask it to write an essay again, take your pick of topic, 5-page essay, 10-page essay, whatever you want it to be. Well, writing that first draft is often a really, really hard thing to do. I struggle with that blank page, but ChatGPT can do it very quickly. So now, as a human being who has an interest in or an expertise in, you then can spend your time editing, you can spend your time enhancing the argument, you can spend your time validating the sources being used, the real work that needs to get done to make sure the point is coming across. So you have that draft, it's researched to an extent, and you can then use your own human judgment, ingenuity, intelligence to then make the improvement. So that's an example, a simple example of where we're seeing how it could make jobs more efficient, make people's lives more efficient. And I know that you're here. AI has been a big topic in Hollywood. The writer's strike has had a lot of questions around the use of AI and how it could impact them. So that's an ongoing debate.
Patrick, I have a question for you.
I would get the one that's broken. Okay. Thank you. So one of the things I was going to say is, so one of my favorite things, I'm on ChatGPT. I'm sure nobody's surprised on this committee a lot. And one of the things that I love that it can do, maybe this is a single person problem, but you can put in ChatGPT all the things like left in your refrigerator, because I don't usually have any food, and it spits out a meal. It's like wonderful. But the dark side, to your point, is I got a call about 2 or 3 months ago about somebody, like a elderly person getting scammed about their grandchild or somebody being kidnapped and to pay all this money, because one of the things that ChatGPT does is it gets used to your voice. And so it's able to, like, I can put into ChatGPT, write a text message like Darshan would write it, or like I would write it, because it learns sort of, the words you use and things like that. So I think one of the things, I'm not sure if there's a legislative solution to that, because people who commit fraud are very creative, and so they'll always find a way around it. But I think one of the jobs as legislators we have to do is let people know that this transformative technology is coming up, and so that they're more aware that on top of all the frauds that you have now you got to worry about this being an extra layer. So thank you.
No, it's a great point. And, states and governments and local governments all over the country, they're all addressing this in some way. They're all, everybody's thinking about it in some way. What we're seeing is that the starting point for the discussion really are those basic principles of securing individuals' data, helping prevent things like fraud, but it gets into security, it gets into data, and it gets into these general principles that you would have anyway. Is a great starting point of how you're going to go about creating policy. I'm not a policy advisor for this committee, but those are some of the trends we're seeing. Protecting data, protecting the ability of an individual to work with government without that data getting exposed, security requirements, those types of things are kind of the front of the discussion oftentimes.
I actually have one more question for you, Representative Prince.
22. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Moore. And I'm very enamored at all this stuff, so please be with me. But the language models that you described earlier in your brief, who control? And I know they are built, as Deshaun said, learning her voice and all this other stuff. Who, for lack of better words, how are those models controlled? Does ChatGPT own so many models or that type of thing? Sorry about that.
They can be controlled. So the broad answer is they can be controlled any way you want them to be controlled, as long as you control them. So ChatGPT, they control their large language model, and they are using publicly available information that you can find on the internet. And as you add data to ChatGPT, so they now know everything in your refrigerator. As you add data, it gets smarter, and it learns, and it adds to that database. So one of the cautions you're frequently hearing is, don't put your personal information in ChatGPT, because it just becomes part of their model at that point. Now, as you're thinking about building models, as our clients, as y'all, as whomever thinks about building models, that's where you get into the management of the other tool sets that are available in the marketplace. So you can go in and say, I want to create a very high-powered chatbot like ChatGPT, but I want it to only use this set of data. I only want it to use these 5 websites and these 2 databases. So you then are telling what the system is going to look at, you're telling it how to access the data, and you're controlling what goes into and what comes out of, you're controlling what comes out of the large language model. I hope that helps. And one of the applications of that is if you're running a service site and you're using a chatbot, that chatbot can begin to, and it's dealing with the services you have available, all right? And all of those services are part of the data set you're using to help answer questions. When somebody goes in and asks a question, in natural language, it can direct them to the correct answer. Well, if you start to ask different questions because the service has changed or something's different, then if the model's trained properly, it can begin to detect that, and it can get smarter about it, and then it can help advise and improve the experience by giving a better direction, or by giving the answer to the owner that we need to go and update the model, or we need to make tweaks to the model. So there's again, just some things to think about here as we talk about just Gen AI, where it's going with government. These foundation models have massive potential. We've talked a lot about the potential. They are big. They generate large volumes of original content, human-like experiences. You can train them to act like you're interacting with a human being. And they can be, what we're finding is they can be fine-tuned. It's easier to fine-tune them than it might be a traditional use, again, like a chatbot. It's easier to make tweaks to them. But then, you have all of the challenges, many of which we've already talked about. You've got security challenges, potential software vulnerabilities. It can be difficult to explain how decisions and outcomes were derived, kind of the question, where's the data coming from? How do you control it? How do you manage it? It does learn social biases easily. So to the point about it being able to use your voice, it will pick up that voice, but it picks up the types of things you're talking about. So if you're talking about things that you don't need to be talking about, it'll pick that up and it will train itself to say, this is appropriate, or this is something that I can say to somebody else. So again, these are the things that we're all learning and how we might deal with them, however you're looking at it, whether you're applying it in a real world situation or you're thinking about policy implications. And then the next to last bullet point is really the one that everybody's going to be working on for a long time. But these convincingly plausible outputs, though the information may be false. ChatGPT, or I don't want to, not necessarily ChatGPT, but just the way these models can be constructed. They can produce false outcomes, and those are documented. So where are we seeing some use cases and some example stories, and so you get away from you never get away from the things you have to caution yourself about, but where can you apply this, and how can it be used in a public service in a government setting? So first of all, and one of the easier areas is in the way that experience with an agency or an organization works. So making it easier to interact, getting questions answered faster, being able to use a chatbot, a more powerful chatbot to get answers faster and clearer than what you might get today. So you can optimize call center performance, case management processing. Chatbots can improve that citizen experience and access to publicly available information, and that's something that's really important. There's a lot that can be done with data that's publicly available. You don't even have to get into the personal information or private health information or those types of things. It can be incredibly powerful just with what's available on the internet. And then the trick, if you're a business owner or you're an agency, is then making sure that publicly available information is as relevant as it must be for an individual to get what they need, so that the chatbot can then find it accurately and can produce the answer that somebody's looking for. So we're finding with workforce, we're seeing workforce operations through automation and augmentation. We're seeing worker co-pilots to reduce backlog and prioritize social service claims. So another example here is, let's say you're on the phone with somebody and you're trying to get, again, I'll use a government case. You're trying to get a benefit, and you're talking to somebody at this point because the computer didn't route you to the right place, and you're on with an agent that is using a generative AI technology in the background that's listening to the call. And this is disclosed. You say all this. It's not like some secret. You'd have to do that. And you're asking them, okay, what's your name? What's your address? What are you looking for? Imagine all that information being populated in real time, rather than having to send a form out to an individual and ask them to fill it out, or having to, somebody else typing it in real time. It can do the technology can do that for you while you're talking in real time. You get the form complete. It's one less step that you have to take physically to go and deal with, a government agency, and it makes that experience more seamless, a little easier to deal with. So we're seeing that as a potential. The enterprise cases are emerging, and when we talk about end-to-end data-led transformations at scale, we're starting to get into some pretty big examples, and we're starting to get into the way that organizations manage and use their entire data sets and how those data sets interact. That's pretty big stuff, but we're starting to see some smaller cases like that emerge, and how you then use that information inside your organization to improve an outcome or to improve your workers' ability to do their job is something that we're seeing. And then transforming our readiness protocol to keep people in the nation safe. We're seeing some at the federal level. We're seeing some exploration into how Gen AI can use unstructured data to help improve intelligence. And what is that? Unstructured data are things like pictures that aren't in a database itself, so versus a spreadsheet, a picture. So being able to scan video and seeing a threat based on what they're seeing in video, or being able to scan images. This is where you start to get into some of the questions that y'all might hear from your constituents back home. But these are, again, use cases, legal, ethical, are all driving principles behind everything that we're trying to work on and how we're guiding clients. But these are real cases that we're beginning to see more and more of. And with that, that's it. And I appreciate the time. And happy to take any more questions.
Do we have any more questions? Okay, we've got a couple. I'll call on Representative Dershant Kendrick first here.
Thank you. So I thank you for the presentation, and I just turned the ripe old age of 41 last week, so I cannot read this. Is there a way I can get the big version?
Yeah, we'll,
Okay.
y'all have it. We just couldn't get the PDF, but yeah, we'll get that to you. Happy birthday, by the way.
Chairman Jaspers.
Wish I was 41. So
I knew you then.
Patrick, you said maybe at heart, but so just two things. Okay, so I could do a talk.
Yep.
Let's say if I wanted to do a political talk, I could use this technology to translate it into Spanish.
Mm-hmm. You could.
But I'd better have somebody check it. Is
Yeah.
that what you're saying? To
Yeah.
make sure
Yeah.
that
The translation capability is pretty good. So if you're just saying translate these words into another language, that's pretty good. You obviously want to check it. But yes, you can do that. Okay. You can even ask it to write the speech for you. You could say, I'm going to go up to Jasper. I've got a chicken dinner I'm going to go speak at. These are the folks who are going to be there. Write a 3-minute speech for me, recognizing these 3 people and why I'm there, and it will spit something out for you.
That's great. The other question I have, okay, Mr. Chairman. So I guess my concern, we kind of chased it just a minute ago. Should you check? Should any individual in here check the database that's on there for what it has on you? And if it is something that you find offensive or you don't want out there, is there a mechanism for you to have it removed?
That's a good question. I don't know. If it's publicly available, then it can pull that data in. Yeah. So if there's something, it's like Googling yourself. You could probably type your name into the Chat GPT, which is an application that's owned by its own company, but you could probably type your name in and see what it pulls up. But if it's publicly available, then you would likely need to go through the same process that you would if you were trying to get that data off the web. But I don't know. That's a good question.
Well, I guess I'm chasing just a little bit. So if somebody had a axe to grind with me,
Mm-hmm.
you, anybody, they would be putting stuff out on the open.
Yeah.
And then I guess that becomes integrated into who you are.
That's right. There are technologies coming out now that can help detect fakes. So that's evolving. I don't know the names of those applications right now, but there are applications that are beginning to address that issue, that if something was put out there not real, you can run it through to prove it's fake. But that's something that you're seeing the technology evolve around that.
Okay.
That was the driver for the beginning of this whole thing, which you
Sure.
just talked about right
Yep.
there.
Well, thank you. Tell you
Yep.
folks, hey.
I actually have a couple of questions myself. It's really about database management and specifically we've got into the situation we were talking about putting your voice into Chat GPT. Now, once my voice is in Chat GPT, does Chat GPT have my voice forever, or do I ever get it back from them? Or that's really kind of one of my privacy questions that I have with the technology. Can you kind of hop on that a little bit?
If you look, I forget what I signed up for when I signed up into ChatGPT. I'm using the free version. I'm not paying, but I don't know what the disclaimer said. So I need to go back and look at the disclaimer. But my assumption is, my understanding is, once you put something in, it's in there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And it's been one of my concerns. I actually, so when I took on this subcommittee, I started digging into AI. I actually started using it just to try and see about augmentation of me in my company and what we could do. And I actually, one of the functions I found to be the best was, I'm exactly the opposite. I like to actually write my material first and then get ChatGPT to proofread. And I find that it takes, first of all, it's very complimentary. It likes I was pretty proud of that. But it takes what I'm writing and it clarifies it. And then we usually bounce 2 or 3 back and forth, and by the time it's done, it's a well-written email, and I think that technology gets us there. I actually did a couple other experiments. I've been concerned about bias, and I think you addressed the bias specifically about you can make this technology if you limit what what it can look at, it's going to only give you answers that are biased to the information that it has available. So I actually got in an argument with it about global warming. I just wanted to fight with it about something. It started off a conversation about bias. That was my beginning, and then we fought about global warming, and I did pretty good because it quit talking to me. So I felt like you know I felt like I won. You know, now it's learning, so now it'll fight with me better next time. But I think, I guess the question to me is, and when I look at the policy front or how you address these issues, how do I know that, how do I know that this isn't, I guess it doesn't have any bias to it, or where it's pulling its information from? Is this just all in disclaimers that you read when you open it up, or can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm going to give you the best answer on that.
Okay.
A lot of it, if you start from the beginning with an AI project, you say you want to use it in an organization, it starts there where you're defining the data sets that go in, and then how it uses the inputs is defined within, the whatever word you want to use, the algorithm, the system, whatever. That's how you train it. You can train bias in, you can train bias out. That's where the human component comes in. So it's based, it's kind of like garbage in, garbage out, whatever goes in can come out. Those principles still are very much real. So I don't have the best answer for that. It's still subject to the whims of humanity in many cases. So that's something we're all learning.
We've got several more on this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what I'm trying to do is set today up to drill down in certain things that we need to
Sure.
look at. This was one of them that's kind of been a concern of mine. Additionally, I think that when you talk about the image generation, I had that concern, same as you, Chairman Jaspers, about what happens if I have images of me? Like, how hard is it to make an image of me? And I will tell you that I'm just going to disclose to everybody here. I asked, not Chat GPT. It's not Chat. It's called something.
There's another one with the images.
Yeah, their image is actually separate. You have to pay for that. So I asked it to. I said, draw me or grade an image of Representative Brad Thomas, Georgia State Assembly, sitting on a horse, shirtless, with a six-pack. And it didn't do it. So I was so excited. I was going to take my wife's here today. I was going to take it to her. Honey, look at this. But unfortunately, the technology it hasn't gotten that far yet. So that's the good news. Is I haven't been able to get it to successfully draw any pictures of.
Would you say bias worked or didn't work in that
case?
It
did. I would say it worked. Well, I don't know. Anyway, so we're going to go up a couple more questions. Representative Kendrick.
Oh, no, that's not me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Representative Cox.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I'm hoping that we can get the database of Chairman Jaspers on the chicken cooking in Pickens County. That would be very helpful for all of us here.
All right.
Questions that, in my mind, that's coming up, and I'm going to approach it from education. So I know that several on this subcommittee are concerned about literacy in the state, and we have a great push for literacy for kids. And as I process, and even in the mathematics and science worlds, I love technology. I really appreciate it. This is concerning where AI is heading, because I think the rules are becoming more unlimited than limited, such as kids no longer, or students no longer being able to think and process their ability to put a blank sheet of paper and create that first draft. And I respect the ability to edit and think through it. So my entire paradigm is shifting on what education looks like, not just in the state of Georgia, but it's going to be around the globe. Even within the General Assembly, we heard some AI speeches from the well, and very well written, incredible stuff. The difficult part is we're not thinking for ourselves. We may be editing, or we're gathering information some may do a better job of gathering information than others when they've done their own research over years. I mean, we all went to schools and had different strengths that we had. How do we protect an 11th grade student or the teacher when they're doing a report on Shakespeare, let's just say, when they're going to go home and they're in different extracurricular and they're going to hit Chat GPT to create the report, they turn it in. At what point is plagiarism falling in there? How are we referencing it? Is a classroom need to be, you have a report that's done by AI, and we know that, and it's transparent, and then we give them a sheet of paper in a classroom and say, write, and let's compare the two. I'm concerned about our ability to think and problem solve. And this becomes a crutch versus a tool. It can be a tool, although apparently you broke the code because it couldn't figure out how to do the six-pack on the horse for you. So
it's hard to put a six-pack on me.
I was in Israel this summer, and we went to a place called Groove Tech on the Gaza Strip border. And they had Monets and Van Goghs that AI had generated, and it was remarkable. Mm-hmm. And we were going through cyber and AI technologies, which was just incredibly eye-opening. How do we protect our kids in school to keep them educated and not dependent upon the technology?
Yeah. If you don't mind, Patrick,
Yeah.
One of the key subcommittee meetings we're going to have, we're going to speak with K through 12 and college or our university system. So just so you know, even if Patrick doesn't have that, that's something that's on our forward agenda. So Patrick, you're more
well,
welcome
I'm just,
to take
now that I
question.
know that, I'm going to be at that committee hearing. I've got 2 teenagers, and I'm trying to deal with this very same thing. So if I had the answer for that, I'd be doing something different. It's a challenge, and it's one of the challenges that we're going to have with this technology. I agree with the concern. I very much do.
Let's see. Last question for this speaker, Representative Crow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Talking about the privacy and specifically to Chairman Jasper's question earlier about the picture of the face.
Yeah.
So in my daily life, I own a real estate brokerage, and a lot of my agents they found a site where they can take their picture and upload it and have generative AI augment their picture and create incredible pictures. It's basically today's version of using a 20-year-old glamour shot on your business cards. What is the risk for them when they upload that picture? Can then anybody go? Is it part of that database? Do you know if somebody else can take their picture and have that? And do they give up some copyright protections by doing that?
That's so the depth of that answer is probably more than what we have time for, getting into privacy concerns. In any case where you're uploading things to the internet, that's at risk of being made available or that you can access it. Within particular applications that use generative AI, I don't know, because each one is going to have its own set of disclaimers and how it can be used. But if you're taking that picture and then you're putting it on the internet, it's like my kids on TikTok or Snapchat or whatever. It's going to be out there and people can use it. And again, it's one of these, it's absolutely a concern.
And to the voice part, I probably somewhat shocking to some people on here. I know everybody expected Darshan to be on there, but I'm actually on Chat GPT too. And I haven't done the six-pack on the horse yet. But I made a note and try that later. But I use it, I'm not 41 anymore. I've turned 50 this year. So social media in my business is big, and all of my agents are constantly on me about being on social media and Instagram. And so I've used it to generate captions for posts, and specifically hashtags. Like, I hate trying to come up with hashtags for things, but apparently that makes your post better if you use a lot of hashtags. Yeah. So you can put in there to generate it. But there's a version or a function in Chat GPT where you can talk to it instead of having to type, which is very nice for me. Is that putting my voice into that when I'm using voice to text to create the prompt in
It's
ChatGPT?
putting your voice into ChatGPT, and then whatever the disclaimer says is how it can be used.
Fantastic. All right, thanks.
Representative Crow, Brian's actually pulled up. There is an opt-out, but it appears to be an opt-out on ChatGPT. So
Yeah.
I guess with us saying ChatGPT so many times, hey, ChatGPT, if you're listening, we'd like to talk to you.
Right, right.
So please give my office a call.
Yeah, and I mean, none of this is to disparage ChatGPT. I mean, they happen to be the ones that broke the dam on how this technology is working. They completely revolutionized this conversation. So, they've set up some rules on how the data is being used. They're telling you where the data is coming from. They're telling you what happens to the data. And, that this is going to be the challenge for organizations of how they can do the same thing to make it work for a use case or solving a problem or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Moore, thank you very much.
Thank
we
you.
appreciate your presentation today.
Thank you.
All right, so next on the agenda, Georgia Chamber of Commerce, Daniela Perry. Come on down.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I appreciate your time this morning and the opportunity to share a little bit about what we're looking at in terms of AI for Georgia's business community. My name is Daniela Perry. I do serve as Vice President of the Foundation. We're kind of the research arm of the Georgia Chamber of Commerce. So kind of just to level set a little bit about, economic picture here in Georgia. We've had 4 years of record economic growth, and of course, Governor Kemp just announced yet another year of record growth, which is tremendous for the state as a whole. You'll see a lot of great numbers, but I would say what we are particularly excited about is that most of this economic activity has been outside of Metro Atlanta and rural communities, showing we've got so much opportunity, innovation, and growth happening in every corner of the state, which of course is incredibly important. I would say with all of that growth, opportunity, we are still facing some challenges from a workforce perspective in particular. Last quarter, there were about 354,000 unique job postings made by companies in every industry. I would say, too, this probably is a little bit of an underrepresentation because many companies will use this job posting multiple times to recruit folks. They'll have one job posting, but they'll hire multiple people. Consistently, we've had registered nurses and software developers as 1 and 2. We started tracking this back in May of 2020, and that's, again, been consistent the whole time. We've had some change around that retail salesperson. It previously was around tractor trailer truck drivers, and retail has kind of slowly moved up in that third spot. But I would say it's important to think, too, about the fact that all of these are in different industries, different skill levels, but still persistent across the state. And of course, as we're thinking about AI, software developers obviously are a top need for the state, and I think this is only going to continue to increase as technologies grow and evolve. The other important note I just want to make is that there's 170,000 that are currently on unemployment right now. So certainly just moving those that are unemployed into the workforce will not meet our workforce shortages. We've got our labor force participation rate is around 61-62%, which means nearly 40% of working age Georgians are not participating in the workforce, which leaves a huge opportunity for us to meet some of our workforce shortages. So knowing we've got lots of big trends that we look at, and that's really what we focus on at the foundation, is long-term economic trends. How do we help our members capitalize on opportunities and mitigate risk? We partnered with Deloitte to do a survey of our membership, all CEOs, but for small, medium, and large-size companies. Asked them some questions about some of the long-term risks that they're evaluating. We first, of course, asked their sentiment towards the economy. You can see that they are extremely optimistic about Georgia and of their industry's performance in Georgia, which is exciting. And you can see that the same is not true about the U.S. economy. it's about half in terms of their optimism about what's occurring. So again, people feel comfortable about being in Georgia, doing business in Georgia, and continuing to be engaged. But we also asked about their investments in different innovations, knowing we completed this survey in January, but we knew this is, again, an emerging issue and things that they're concerned about. You can see the pink is what they have invested in over the last 3 years, and then the blue bar is measuring what they're planning to invest in the next 3 years. You'll see automation and digital solutions was the top for that, with nearly 70% of CEOs saying they had invested in it, and an equal number saying they're going to invest in it over the next 3 years. The next biggest categories were analytics and cybersecurity. So certainly all things that are going to be impacted by AI over the long term. And again, as we're talking about long-term trends, workforce shortages is paramount for Georgia CEOs. You'll see that on average, they needed to increase their workforces by about 6%, with outliers up to 20%, which is significant. So again, we're really here to help our members capitalize on those opportunities and mitigate risk. We've talked a little bit about some of those war for talent and workforce shortages that is a huge risk for Georgia businesses. But the other one is evolving technology. We know that over the last few years, we've had incredible disruption. Really what occurred in those couple years of the pandemic accelerated growth in technologies and innovation by at least 5 to 10 years. And so it was a very short period. Everything was accelerated. Disruption occurred at an unparalleled level, which is creating so many opportunities, which I think we heard from Patrick talking about the full breadth. But it certainly gives everyone pause in terms of how do you use this well, and how do you make sure you're managing it appropriately, and of course leveraging its effectiveness for citizens and for employees, businesses. But these are all incredible, risks that we have to manage appropriately to continue to keep Georgia competitive over the long term. So again, we've talked a little bit about AI and certainly its opportunities. Wanted to kind of just think a little bit about how this is touching some of the major industries in Georgia. You'll see food tech, which is a lot of food manufacturing, logistics, healthcare, manufacturing, all things that are incredibly important. But again, want to just focus on this piece of the fact that, as AI and other technologies continue to evolve and grow, it's really going to take some of those mundane parts of people's jobs, eliminate those parts, but really require that workers are able to do a lot more critical thinking and high skill work. So because those mundane tasks are automated, taken away, what you're going to require workers to do is much more higher skill thinking than they previously may have done. So certainly appreciate the question about how do we really train our workforce and reskill them differently, because it's really going to require workers to do a lot more higher order thinking in terms of problem solving, critical thinking. All of those things are going to be much more important over the long term, even in lower skill positions. Lower skill are certainly the ones that we're most concerned about from an automation perspective, because they're most easily automated. But again, really what we see is the fact that these certain parts of a job will kind of get automated that are more mundane, and just really expound upon what is really unique about being human and kind of the way a human thinks. So these are all certainly occupations that will be impacted by this industry. It's not just necessarily information technology. Obviously, that's a huge part. Your software developers, cybersecurity, everything like that. But really, every industry is going to feel these impacts, and workers are going to be required to work and think a lot differently. So as we're looking over the long term globally, we're going to see economic growth by $13 trillion by the end of this decade, which is substantial, to say the least. We are going to see this work automation continue to add to productivity, but of course that's really dependent on the fact that we make sure that our workers are able to upskill, reskill, remain in the workforce, but be in different roles. We do have high tech and AI. It's used for all of our largest industries. We pulled out a few here: healthcare, agriculture, manufacturing. Those industries alone employ nearly 1 million Georgians, which is 1/5 of our workforce. So again, as this is impacting citizens in your districts, our workforce as a whole, it's got profound and long-term impacts of how it's going to transform industries that are critical to Georgia's economic success. Of course, as we're thinking about all of those industries and how they're going to need to upskill, reskill, change, we do have a significant demand for high-tech workforce. We are expecting our computer and analytics occupations to grow by 16% by 2030, which is substantial. Right now, Georgia ranks 10th for the most high-tech jobs in the United States, which is a great place to be. It really shows that we've got a lot of our talent development infrastructure here and in place to meet needs. But again, as we're seeing this technology grow, evolve, and change at an exponential rate, we know that our workforce demands are going to increase rapidly, meaning that we're going to have new constraints and new demands on our talent infrastructure to develop this workforce to help government entities as well as private companies utilize this technology and really maximize its effectiveness. And then our high-tech job growth rate, which is around the 14th highest in the U.S., which is certainly a great place to be. But again, as we're seeing this huge demand, we know lots of tech companies are here in Georgia and operating well. We know that their demands are only going to increase over the long term. Of course, these are all very highly paid positions too. So we know for individuals that have these, they're able to have a great quality of life for their families and citizens, which is a good thing, obviously, for the economy and for those individual Georgians as well. So kind of just to sum up on some of the challenges and opportunities, I would say the upskilling and reskilling is significant. If you'll remember, our labor force participation rate in Georgia is 62%, which means nearly 40% of Georgians aren't currently participating in the workforce that are of working age. So that's representing a huge piece that we need in the workforce. And our labor force participation rate has slowly been declining over the last 20, 30 years. So that's not new, but of course, as we're seeing these huge workforce shortages already, it's compounding a lot of what we are seeing. And of course, knowing we've got this huge growth in so many high-tech fields and high-tech jobs, we have to have the infrastructure to develop those pipelines, as well as kind of upskill folks that are in the workforce and then reach people that have opted out of the workforce as well. I would say certainly, though, this workforce pipeline, we need to get in front of kids sooner to help them understand what employment looks like in these occupations. In a lot of the high-tech fields, because people don't have exposure to what employment looks like, they don't know that they can or should be pursuing it. It offers certainly huge opportunities and great salaries and qualities of life, but if you're someone that doesn't know anyone in cybersecurity, you don't know what that occupation looks like. Would you enjoy it? Is it something that's good? Of course, the state needs more cybersecurity experts, but knowing what employment looks like and wanting to direct kids into those fields is very important. I would say especially children from underrepresented backgrounds may not know all of those opportunities, and there certainly are some gender biases that come too of women that don't know that they should be in technology fields and things like that. So it's all kind of things that we're watching in terms of how do we develop this workforce pipeline over the long term. And then, of course, thinking about how does industry best capitalize on this opportunity, make sure they're growing, but then is also able to manage things appropriately. So I'm happy to take any questions, but again, I appreciate your time this morning and your attention to this matter.
Thank you, Daniela. I appreciate it. You do have a couple questions, but I'll tell you what, we'll go ahead and take the questions and I'll go after that. 25, Representative Kendrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that. I'm not sure what the scope of the Georgia Chamber, if you represent larger businesses or small, but I'll ask this question anyway. Is the Georgia Chamber currently helping particularly smaller business sort of get retooled and up to speed on this very fast moving technology?
Yeah, so we actually have a small business policy council specifically for our small businesses in the chamber, and we're always bringing kind of these opportunities and issues in front of them so that they can better understand what resources they're able, that they can evaluate, understand how they can take advantage of it. So we're certainly doing that with the small businesses that are members of the chamber, but I certainly think that's an opportunity too, as we know that small businesses are often under-resourced and don't have the full suite of this, so certainly something that we could think about how to partner with other entities within the state to make sure more small businesses have access to these resources.
Chairman Jones.
Thank you for your presentation. My concern relies around, to your point, building the workforce. We have traditionally seen, and by the way, I love my schools, I love my technical colleges and my universities, maybe except for the Georgia Bulldogs. And go Georgia Tech. But we are in a tech committee, but in all seriousness, just being objective, K-12 is typically 10 years behind. The technical colleges tend to be a little more relevant, and then the universities tend to lag. Is the Georgia Chamber working side by side with these three entities to try and ensure that our Georgians are able to pick up these skills? Because my concern is they're going to just automatically go, outside, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I'd love to be able to, quote, have Georgia-grown workforce be able to take care of Georgia companies. Could you maybe shed some light on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We have great relationships with the Department of Education, TCSG, and USG. We're consistently, really thinking about how we can better partner to make sure that districts across the state know of those opportunities in their community to get employment. I would say consistently we are talking about a number of high-demand industries that have these growing workforce needs, and how do we build better pipelines. So we certainly have had conversations with all of those entities on how we do this. Certainly it's going to require a lot of actors all working together, especially at the local and state level. And we're committed to continuing to do more work because it's something that will be vital for our companies and for our students over the long term.
All right, I see no more questions. I actually am going to defer mine to the education meeting later, so I think we're good. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Appreciate you. Our next speaker, Georgia Production Partnership, LaRonda Sutton. Hello, Ms. Sutton. In my understanding, you're just speaking on you don't have any material or anything,
Yes,
correct?
no,
Okay. No.
Yes, no PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
I'll just be reading my speech.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. Great morning, and thank you to the committee chairman and Georgia State Representative.
Can I get you to speak into the mic?
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Better? Okay. Let's see. Thank you to committee chairman, Georgia State Representative Brad Thomas, and Representative Darshan Kendrick, and the esteemed state representatives of the AI Subcommittee for welcoming me to speak today. My name is LaRonda Sutton, and I am the co-president of Georgia Production Partnership. GPP is a nonprofit coalition of individuals and businesses in the screen, music, and gaming industries. Since 1995, our mission has been to advocate for, educate, and train our entertainment industry workforce. I also own entertainment.gov, a government consulting agency that develops economic development strategies to increase revenue, job opportunities, marketing, and tourism. I crafted the strategic plans and standard operating procedures for the City of Atlanta as the founding director of the Mayor's Office of Film and Entertainment, the DeKalb Entertainment Commission, Fulton Films, and the North Georgia Film Office. And I also produce films. As a member of the creative class, I commend all of you on this committee for realizing that the future is right now and taking on the heavy lifting of examining the new frontier of A&I. Chairman Thomas, you said, AI has the potential to revolutionize industries and transform the way we live, work, and even play here in Georgia. As with emerging technology, we must examine the challenges posed as this technology continues to advance. This is especially true for our Georgia entertainment industry. GPP examines AI in 3 branches: use, growth, and safety. We are rapidly adopting the use of AI for many reasons, including AI can automate repetitive tasks such as video editing, sound mixing, and even script analysis, speeding up the post-production process and making it more efficient and productive. AI technologies can reduce the need for expensive equipment, specialized resources for tasks such as CGI, animation, and visual effects, making it more cost-effective. AI algorithms can assist in creative processes, offering suggestions for plot development, character arcs, and even music scores, enhancing production's overall quality and creativity. AI can analyze consumer behavior and preferences, helping producers and marketers make better data-driven decisions. AI can quickly and accurately translate subtitled content, making it easier to distribute Georgia-produced films globally. AI can optimize energy use in production facilities, contributing to the state's and industry's sustainability goals. We can continue to foster responsible, innovative AI growth by partnering with local universities, the Georgia Film Academy, and tech companies to develop AI training programs tailored to the film and entertainment industry. Encourage collaborations between the state government, the film industry, and tech companies to fund AI research and development, the public-private partnership, the 3 Ps. Incentivize innovation by implementing the additional benefits for entertainment projects incorporating AI technologies from Georgia companies sparking innovation. Host events that showcase the capabilities of AI in filmmaking, attracting talent and investment to Georgia, such as AI-driven film festivals. Establish a committee to develop ethical guidelines for AI's use in the film and entertainment industry, ensuring responsible adoption. We can protect our creative workforce and community by systemizing safety nets and precautions, such as develop and implement retraining programs for industry workers whose jobs may be automated, focusing on skills complementary to AI, ensuring job protection. Avoid unintended biases and maintain transparency in how AI algorithms make decisions, especially in creative processes. Ensure data privacy by establishing robust data protection measures to safeguard the personal information that AI systems may handle. Always and in all ways have human oversight for AI systems to make final decisions and on creative and ethical matters. And finally, conduct audits of AI systems to ensure that they meet the ethical quality standards. The responsible adoption of AI can significantly benefit Georgia's film industry, which already has an annual impact of over $4 billion. Our industry will adhere to the new policies on AI outlined in the union agreements with the writers and hopefully soon with the actors. In closing, I'd like us all to remember that AI is the complement to humanity and creativity, not the replacement for it. I'm grateful for your time and attention and open to any questions.
Chairman Jones.
You probably have more insight into what's happening with the writers and the actors, but theoretically with AI, a 40-year-old Clint Eastwood and a 40-year-old Morgan Freeman could keep making sequels to Unforgiven forever because you could effectively direct, even when they pass. And I'm not trying to be, but you see where I'm going with this. We effectively could, because we have their voices, we have as much video as you can probably imagine of 2 great actors, that we could make a franchise, or not we, but the producers and directors could do that. Is stuff like that, and I don't want to take too much of the chairman's time, but is stuff like that being discussed by the writers and the actors in terms of the way we get a pipeline of new actors in? Is, I hate to say it, the old actors retire. You know what I mean? So, do we hold on to, quote, Clint and Morgan, or do we let the next folks move in, does the writers or do the actors, in terms of their negotiations, are they taking I guess a position on that?
Yes, because right now, as a part of the, the strike and the negotiations between the AMPTP and SAG-AFTRA, is the use of likeness and image, and at what point, for instance, a background actor can or extra can sign a waiver just to be in the film. And according to the terms and likenesses, they may not know that they might be signing over that image for the duration, and that, a producer, a movie studio can take that image and do anything with it, right? And so they just want to make sure, SAG-AFTRA, which is one of the major points with the likeness and image, that there is another, additional clauses that if you're going to use this image again, I have to approve it as the actor and be able to be aware of when you're going to use it again. So it's a huge sticking point because, right now I'm not sure if you watch or if you're on Instagram and you see the dancing images and they put all the different actors and they're doing different things. That's the use of AI, and those actors did not approve it, and they're created on TikTok. And so imagine, when the Fast 7, when the actor died, and they needed to have him finish the end of the movie, and even Star Wars with Carrie Fisher, they needed her in the movie, and they used their likeness, their voice, the image, and everything. So, it's a huge sticking point for SAG-AFTRA.
Representative Cox.
To go off what Chairman Jones was saying, so pretty much we're going to get into NIL contracts with actors like we have in collegiate sports is what this sounds like, right? I mean, that may be the path forward, it appears.
Well, look, I can't speak for our whole industry as as the representative of our whole entire industry, but I can tell you that I do, foresee in the future, there being certain types of agreements made with your A, your B, and your C-level actors and your extras, and they're going to have to kind of secure their big stars in some way. And so, yes, I do see that there will be some type of different contracts and bargaining agreements amongst the studios for that.
So I think you actually hit on something that's been in the back of my head. So obviously we've gone through several, in the history of the United States, and I would just say of our species in general, we've moved through certain time periods where we have excelled in technological advances, right? I think we're at the precipice of our next one. And one of the things that I've found is the best place to figure out what to do is, that's why you learn history, right? So one thing that I saw that was really big around the turn of the turn of the 20th century was a lot of the technical societies, a lot of people got together. I'm an engineer. ASME, American Society of Mechanical Engineers, ASCE, American Society of Civil Engineers, got together and they created standards and codes and certain things that, obviously no one up here is AI programmers. We're not professionals in this. What are you doing, and what is the film industry doing to kind of create its own set of standards and guidelines instead of just necessarily putting it on here at the state government? So.
Yes, absolutely. We have several organizations that are really drilling down on AI and the future of where it's going to go. It's so vast and so expansive, and when you look at the Association of Motion Picture Television Producers, which is AMPTP, the body that has Disney, Netflix, Apple, and the giant companies. They're doing their research, their studies, and coming up with guidelines, as well as, our union organizations like SAG-AFTRA and the Writers Guild of America, as well as the Producers Guild of America. So we have we have several different bodies within the entertainment industry that are collectively coming together, as well as, individually their own, organizations drilling down on AI and what the future, because I can tell you now just, AI has been around for a very long time, and we're just now beginning to be introduced to it and scratch the surface. But, James Cameron told us, in the 80s, Terminator, that it was coming. Yeah. And so,
Well, hopefully not Skynet.
Right, exactly. And so what we know for sure is that right now, as an industry, all of our industries across the board, we have to really begin and prepare, because we're just at the forefront, we're just at the beginning, but the technology is not waiting for us. Mm-mm. And it is like right now, we're probably 10 years behind on what's actually, available and ready. And so, yes.
I want to just tell you, I really liked the section 3 in your letter about the cautions and safety nets.
Yes.
I don't know if you noticed, but that seems to be a general theme of what we're talking about here in the committee. So I think we've realized it, but it's kind of nice to see it siloed the way that you put it together. So I really appreciate this. And it looks like we've got one more question, Representative Kendrick.
Thank you, and thank you so much for coming and testifying. I appreciate it. One of my questions has to do with sort of people who are starting out in this industry, and smaller writers and people who are just getting out, because we know that larger production companies have a much larger budget and resources and things. So I'm worried about AI, taking jobs or stifling people who are just starting out in this industry. And so I've heard it's a really tough industry to really get into in the first place. So even though AI has some benefits as far as productivity, is there anybody looking at how do you strike that balance between making sure that you are able to use AI, but you're not preventing a whole new generation of people who want to get into this industry from, sort of breaking through and having a place and a role?
Well, one of the things that we're really excited about with the Writers Guild agreement with the AMPTP is that it makes sure that when AI is introduced, that within the creative process, that everyone is aware, the writers are notified, the production company is notified, so that you understand the balance between the human creativity and what the AI is doing, and exactly where they are in the process. I think that notion is going to permeate across the board for our industry, just in terms of, the writing and the creative process. At what point are you introducing AI? And you can, AI should be the complement to our creativity. It is never meant to replace the creativity. And so there should be no problem in introducing, I started my rough draft, my outline for my script or whatever, and I started with the AI, or this is my idea, I introduced AI in to edit, to add some, plot lines or whatever, but at some point you're going to have to identify that. And I think for new writers, especially when they are, putting their ideas down and want to use the AI, I think they have to make sure to identify where they used it in the process. And I think as a person that receives scripts and reads them, that I want to know at what point and where, kind of give me the idea of where you use the AI. And I don't think it should hinder growth in that way.
Well, we appreciate you very much. Thank you for presenting
Thank
today.
you.
And
Thank you.
Obviously, I'm sure you'll be available if we have any questions, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Thank you. You all have a fabulous weekend.
You too. So I've got one more presenter. We can take the option if anybody needs to take a bio break, or we can just keep going and wrap this thing up. Wrap it up? Keep going. All right, let's keep going. All right, next speaker is Heritage Foundation, Jake Denton, research associate in the tech policy sector. What's that? No. Hey, all right, Mr. Denton, thank you for being here today.
Absolutely. Thanks
My
for having
understanding is you came in from DC. Is that
I did,
correct?
yes, yeah.
All right.
Quick trip. All right. Well, good morning. My name is Jake Denton, and I'm a research associate in the Tech Policy Center at the Heritage Foundation. I want to start by first thanking you all for affording me the privilege of giving my perspective on AI policy today. Artificial intelligence holds tremendous potential to benefit our nation and the state of Georgia across countless industries, from healthcare to transportation. The promises are boundless. However, as AI systems evolve to be more sophisticated and autonomous, we must acknowledge the corresponding risks. The challenge governments around the world are now tasked to solve is a delicate balancing act, one that entails fostering innovation to improve lives while simultaneously erecting guardrails that foster public trust. Such an undertaking demands a nuanced approach, as the risks and benefits of AI vary profoundly depending on the context in which they are used. The notion of a one-size-fits-all solution swiftly crumbles when faced with the intricacies of AI's multifaceted landscape. Oversight cannot and should not be homogeneous. It must adapt to the unique attributes of various industries, applications, and their degree of human exposure. For instance, an AI system entrusted with diagnosing illness ought to be held to a far more stringent standard than one merely curating movie recommendations. The measures to mitigate risk must be tailor-fitted to each domain, considering factors like the potential for harm. Amid this diversity of use cases, essential principles like transparency and explainability should be universal. Many advanced AI models, which often act as complex black boxes, conceal their inner mechanisms, making them challenging to decipher even for the developers. While these models may be suitable for low-risk applications like product or movie recommendations, their deployment in sectors like healthcare and finance should raise concerns. In these critical domains, the opacity of black box models hinders accountability when errors impact lives and livelihoods. Without clear insight into how AI reaches pivotal decisions, it becomes complicated to validate its judgments and assure the accuracy of its task execution. Similarly, when harms occur, untangling the web of responsibility becomes a formidable challenge. Therefore, for systems with grave consequences, transparency and explainability must be non-negotiable. In contexts involving matters of life and liberty, black box models should be unequivocally designated as high risk, warranting the utmost scrutiny. This underscores why legislators should pursue legislative solutions that encourage explainable AI systems, which are the linchpin in meaningful oversight. Explainable AI furnishes visible audit trails, clarifying the decision-making process of AI systems. For instance, an explainable AI system in the medical field could clarify how different patient factors influence a recommended diagnosis, offering the necessary transparency to detect errors in decision-making. For AI systems operating in high-stakes environments like finance or healthcare, AI explainability serves as the bedrock of trust. In navigating the intricate terrain of keeping complex AI models safe within high-stakes environments, lawmakers should also contemplate the merits of impartial third-party audits and risk assessments before these models are deployed. Once unleashed, lawmakers should try to ensure that continuous monitoring, auditing, and risk assessments occur to ensure that we can swiftly detect and rectify emerging issues. Shifting to a business perspective, we're already beginning to see how artificial intelligence applications, such as chatbots, can raise concerns regarding intellectual property protection and data privacy for business. Picture an employee's seemingly innocent decision to utilize an AI tool for a routine grammar check on a document. While this may sound harmless, this action can compromise sensitive information and a business's intellectual property. Now envision a thriving technology company headquartered right here in Georgia, one that has dedicated years to the development of groundbreaking software. This software, representing a bona fide industry breakthrough, promises substantial economic growth for the state. Yet an inadvertent slip, such as a well-intentioned employee feeding proprietary information or code into an AI tool for a simple proofreading task or bug fix, could kill the company's chance at success. In the blink of an eye, an AI model can turn an innocent task into a case of intellectual property theft. It is important to understand that once an AI model has been exposed to confidential or proprietary data, there is no turning back. There is no magical undo button. The ramifications for Georgia's business landscape are nearly immeasurable, as the aftermath of such an event can be profoundly detrimental, casting a shadow over the business of any size in any sector. In light of these formidable concerns, it once again falls upon lawmakers to proactively seek solutions that can gracefully strike a delicate balance. These solutions must find a way to empower Georgia businesses to harness the transformative potential of AI-powered technologies while concurrently ensuring that precious data remains secure and fortified against inadvertent breaches or theft. The recent advancements to generative artificial intelligence systems are also forcing us to come face to face with a disconcerting reality that we as consumers and citizens place an unjustifiably high level of trust in the content displayed on our screens. This trust, though often well-intentioned, has become a fertile ground for manipulation, be it in retail or during critical electoral processes. In the retail domain, consumers have increasingly gravitated toward online platforms for their shopping needs, bestowing profound trust in product descriptions, reviews, and advertisements. The rise of generative artificial intelligence has ushered in an era where digital storefronts can craft hyper-realistic synthetic product images, conjure detailed fake reviews, and spin uniquely persuasive narratives designed to deceive or manipulate unsuspecting shoppers. The consequences, shoppers, including Georgians, find themselves ensnared in a web of deceptive advertising and trapped depending upon a digital marketplace that they cannot trust. Likewise, within sphere of politics, voters depend on information disseminated through digital media and through our screens to make decisions at the ballot box. Generative AI has the capacity to churn out convincing fake news stories, fabricate endorsements, and contrive fake statements on behalf of candidates, thereby distorting truth and jeopardizing the integrity of elections. Hyper-realistic, deceiving content can now be quickly generated on an unprecedented scale, making it easier than ever to manipulate public opinion or the votes of citizens. As we stand on the precipice of this new technological frontier, lawmakers should understand that this will be a long process, and it will not necessarily be easy to govern this technology. However, you should not feel disheartened about the seemingly daunting task of reining in AI. You should all be excited and encouraged by the unique opportunity to shape the future and make Georgia an even better place to live. It's important to remember that while discussions about this technology often gravitate towards its challenges and potential risks, there is no need to fear or reject it outright. Rather, our focus should be on finding effective ways to govern it, harnessing its potential for the betterment of society. If properly harnessed, we have an opportunity to exponentially improve our quality of life, an opportunity to surmount the insurmountable, and an opportunity to begin a new golden age of American prosperity. With responsible oversight and guidelines for development, AI has the potential to spark an era of unparalleled innovation that can propel America to new heights. We have already seen how AI can lead to revolutionary breakthroughs in fields like healthcare, transportation, energy, and manufacturing. The ingenuity unleashed by AI can expand human potential, help cure diseases, transform industries, and catapult American businesses into the future. I'm optimistic that if we approach this thoughtfully, prioritizing the public good, we can unlock benefits for all Americans while proactively addressing risks. The keys will be promoting transparency, accountability, and human values as we integrate these tools into our daily lives and businesses. This hearing is an important step on the path to realizing that boundless future for America. Together, through forward-looking policymaking, we can ensure that these technologies uplift our nation and align with the ideals our country was founded upon. Thank you all again for your time and for granting me the opportunity to share my perspective on this emerging policy challenge. I'm now available to address any questions that you may have.
You have a couple. We'll start off with Representative Prince.
Listen, thank you for your presentation, and it's not so much a question, just a comment. Again, I agree that this is a challenging thing, but technology, as we know, we have to go with it. I mean, because it's going, and we just have to figure out where we can jump on. So I look forward to you and your organizations helping us, especially when you talk about the threats of it. And of course, we got the chamber here, and we want to talk about economic growth and things like that and how it's going to contribute there. But and I know we're going to have something on education at another session, but we look forward to working with you guys to help us sort of figure this whole thing out. But thanks again for your presentation.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and we look forward to helping you with anything you could need.
Chairman Jaspers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jake, of course, we all appreciate the work the Heritage Foundation does on lots of subject matters. So I guess what I've been, since we've started talking about this, I don't skip over that in the Wall Street Journal when it talks about AI. I started reading it now to try to get up on this. So most of the regulations that are proposing are coming on the federal side. Is that what you're seeing?
So at the federal level, what we're seeing right now is the introduction of frameworks. They're not necessarily legislative texts. They're a series of pillars for sound AI policymaking. And so while these discussions are ongoing and we're debating AI policy, many of the popular pieces of legislation that you're hearing mentioned on the nightly news haven't even had pen to paper at this moment. They're bullet points. And so the challenge now for states is, do we sit back and we wait for the federal level to lay a foundation, or do we move, because it's going to take potentially years for sound AI policy? And so at the state level, several years back, we started to see AI policy emerge. Things like patient rights, things like discrimination in the hiring process. And so there are piecemeal solutions here and there, but it came at a time where these tools were at minimal viability. They didn't really have grand consequences. And so what we're seeing now is they proliferate across all aspects of life. We need to go backwards and we need to lay a foundation. And that's what the federal level is trying to do, but in typical federal fashion, they're moving very slowly. And so the states are in many ways going to have to undergo that same task. They're going to have to lay solid foundational principles for how their state wants to integrate artificial intelligence and how they want it to interact with their citizens.
I know I have another question, but I don't know what it is. I'm sorry. Because there's so much, I guess mine is that, looking at, so I guess I agree. The federal will, if ever, never, unless it's a departmental move. So you're saying that you think the states need to be looking at this group, and legislatures need to be looking at creating foundational frameworks for all this to work.
That's correct. And, in many ways, the federal level has already done that for you. These frameworks that are out there are ready to go. We just haven't been able to put pen to paper. And so those principles, those ideas have been established. They're well accepted on a bipartisan level. They just haven't turned them into actual policy pillars, right? There isn't a piece of legislation that we could vote on tomorrow in any body. And so what you have now is this opportunity to take that foundational research and turn it into something at a state level and make sure that those protections that we all agree we need are actually implemented.
So,
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead, please.
So just so you know, I'm assigning everybody homework on your Friday. Yeah. So there's approaches to regulating artificial intelligence primer written by NCSL that's been provided to all y'all. Just some light reading between now and the next, but I would recommend you look at page 7.
You'll have to give us another committee day to read all of
I will. There's the main chair down there. I think he'll approve it. He gives a thumbs up.
Just not on Friday.
Not on Friday. So, getting back to you. Yeah, here we go. You don't have it? There you go. And if you don't have it, we'll make sure, and we'll send it out to anybody that's not here as well. You talked a little bit about black box. You use that term. It sounds like industry lingo. I know black box usually means it goes in, nobody knows what happens, and then it comes back out. And could you kind of talk a little bit about that, the specifics of that, and with regards to healthcare and finance for me?
Certainly.
Please?
Yeah, so this is one of the more kind of computer science-y, nerdy elements of AI policy, but it's one that is going to define the effectiveness of any piece of legislation that you'll put forward. So many of these AI models have essentially been built as deep neural networks. And, again, separating from the lingo, this means that they scraped vast amounts of data over the internet, and they were compiled in layers. Think of it as like just, a bunch of information piled on top of each other. And similar to the brain's neural networks, you send in a question just as you would hear something, and it shoots out pulse waves and grabs different elements and generates a response. And so as this AI model, a really good example is ChatGPT, right? So you type in a question, write me a poem, or, what day of the week is it? And it gives you a response. And there's varying degrees of risk associated with not knowing how it reached that response. So you are able to fact check that it is indeed Friday, but you might not be able to fact check that you actually have this ailment that your doctor prescribed. And so in the healthcare environment, what is happening is they're using these black box models. A really good example of this is MD Anderson in Houston a few years ago adopted IBM Watson as kind of a co-pilot for their doctors. And they would go into the patient room and they would make their initial assessment, and then they would essentially fact check themselves through IBM Watson. And there were a few instances that were all revealed through leaks several years later about why they stopped using this technology, where the sidekick, their co-pilot, would recommend prescriptions or treatment plans that would actually hurt the patient. And it was really confusing for a lot of these doctors why they were coming to these false conclusions. And it turned out that the model was trained on false data, fictionalized data, hypothetical scenarios that were pulled from engineers trying to solve for a very specific problem. And so it is treating this fictionalized information as fact and resulting in potential patient harm. And so the black box model, really what it all comes down to is you just don't understand how it got the knowledge that it has. And when you open it up, which is referred to as a white box model, you're able to audit that. You're able to go, well, that article it pulled from is from a satirical website, but it's being treated as fact. We can throw this answer out. Right now, you would have no ability to do that. And for many people, that sounds crazy, but we're adopting these systems in critical infrastructure in high-risk scenarios, and we can't even begin to understand how it reached its conclusion. So it's a very important thing as it scales into governments, as it scales into day-to-day lives, because aside from just patient concerns, cybersecurity is a huge element of this. You can actually have backdoors hidden in that deep neural network that can give an adversary or a bad actor, someone trying to put ransomware in government, access to this model. It could just be a backdoor, and you have no way of knowing. And so it's been a tool for industry to progress very quickly and for them to, bypass a lot of oversight. But as this technology gets more advanced, it's just not sustainable. We can't allow for these opaque systems to just, govern over us.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate here for a minute, okay? So if I was on the other side and I was ChatGPT and I spent billions of dollars in creating all this, I don't know how I would feel about being able to just put all my code out and let the next guy come along and swipe all of it, right? Copy and paste. Next thing it's ChatGPT or whatever, right? So, what do you think the balance needs to be between those two? Like, how do we protect intellectual property, but at the same time make sure that we're being transparent?
Yeah, what's interesting is that when you propose this to industry groups, the thing that they oftentimes, state as the concern for lifting that black box is not the intellectual property. It is not this idea that a new company could come in and steal their information. It's that it slows the progress of development. And that's actually just completely false if you break it down, because when you actually have the white box model, when you're able to audit these systems, you can figure out why it's making mistakes. And so it's a very surface level rebuttal that most of these industry groups would present to you, but they almost universally agree with open source. And if you look at Facebook, or Meta rather now, they've actually open sourced their whole model. It's currently available, and no one has stolen their progress. There isn't someone who has rivaled their technology. It's been out for almost a year, and it's been fine. They've seen a lot of progress. They're going to debut their AI chatbot system here in the next couple of months, and there was no concern over that. And so it shows that it's a very shallow talking point that the tech industry groups are giving to you because it sounds reasonable. But when it goes through that level of scrutiny, it turns out to just kind of be an unrealistic concern for them.
Okay, we're going to kick around to a couple other questions. Representative Crow hasn't asked one here in a while, so it's all you.
Thank you. And this the conversation about the white box model may help with some of this, but and I started to ask this earlier to everybody. I don't know who, if anybody, can really answer it right now, but the Pope and the puffer jacket, things like that appear so real. And we already, have issues with social media and other forms of media. People get information from the internet, and they sometimes believe all of it. And some of the stuff is so realistic looking that it's very hard to tell whether it's real or whether it's AI generated. Would that help with being able to determine that? And is there some kind of technology, or are there companies working to try to develop systems to help detect artificial intelligence generated images and text, so we can tell what's real from what's fake? Because, you know, the perception is reality, and so people start seeing this, and if it looks so real, they're going to believe that the Pope was running around in a puffer jacket, and that's that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, so the black box concern is for a different type of artificial intelligence. The black box concern is more for these chatbot systems and for the critical infrastructure systems where, maybe you're a consultancy integrating this technology for audits. You would be concerned over how it reached its final conclusions, and that's where the black box is relevant. You want to audit that decision-making trail. When it comes to the generative systems producing these types of images, you're absolutely correct. And the unfortunate reality is today the technology is as bad as it will ever be, right? We are progressing at an exponential scale where every single day it's making huge leaps. You can go back and look at a timeline and see that on a day-to-day basis, it's making substantial evolutions to where, the eyes rival anyone's eyes. The facial complexion rivals a photograph I could take of you right now. And the watermarking technology or the detection technology has not reached a similar evolutionary track. As this technology becomes more sophisticated, we're taking a great deal of time to implement tech to detect it. And, you look at social media, which is the primary disseminating body for this type of information, those platforms will be the ones that have to implement this technology. They're going to be the ones who have to have detection software because bad actors will always be able to get around the watermark on the creation side of things. And then when it goes to the dissemination, it's impossible unless those platforms step in. And the one thing I will caution you over is you do create a bit of a troubling scenario where those models will not be perfect. There will be things that slip through the cracks. And if a fake image is not flagged as fake, then suddenly it is certifiably real for 99% of the American public. If you are constantly seeing images flagged as fake and one slides through, that image could have devastating impact because we've simply decided that, this is the factual basis upon determining a real image versus synthetic image. And so there's going to have to be a delicate balancing act of public trust. We're going to have to figure out a way to still flag these images as fake, have the disclaimers, but not create a paradigm where if one slips through the cracks, it could have a devastating impact on something like an Iowa caucus or something of that nature, where there's just not enough time to debunk that it's a fake image. So the tech is out there, people are working on it, but the platforms are going to be the ones primarily that carry the burden to implement it.
Representative Kendrick. Oh, I'm sorry, Cox.
Thanks for being here. This is hitting in an area that I'm involved in with cybersecurity, and Chairman Thomas and I are kind of tag teaming this from a cyber to a AI standpoint. Transparency, accountability, and human values. I think those were your bullet points, which are relevant to every one of us here and in the state. We're at a place where theft and lies and fake news is everywhere, right? On all sides. So I don't trust much of it. You used the comment right then on public trust. Don't think that's going to happen. I just don't think that we have to verify. My concern, you hit on something I haven't quite processed till now, was on intellectual property. So if Chairman Thomas is creating some engineering and he creates his own draft and then has ChatGPT to clean it up, and they kind of do that, and let's say it was intellectual property which he had, that can easily be stolen now, right?
Correct. And so a good example of this is within our federal government. The House has completely banned the use of the free version of ChatGPT because they're scared of sensitive information being compromised. And then if you look within the tech sector itself, you see Apple prohibiting its engineers from using ChatGPT for code correction. I believe Facebook as well has gone that route. So across the spectrum, people have acknowledged that we don't know where it goes, but the input to output scenario, the data goes somewhere that's not safe enough.
So the concern, and we had the film industry, and she asked a great question on how does this affect the newcomers and stuff, or an actor's name, image, and likeness, and let's say they're retired and they're using them in some place. This is becoming incredibly problematic, right? I mean, I think we all
Absolutely,
agree
yeah.
with that. Online reviews, hadn't thought about if we're going online and purchasing. I mean, I know there's fake reviews and all of that, so you can have that. It gets even more challenging with, even in the political world, you may get a phone call from something that's robotic, has nothing to do with any of the people involved, that's bad actors, just manipulating outcomes of people's views on elections, or it could be even in your own family. So I have always appreciated what y'all do for many, many years, and thankful that you're here, and I definitely want to talk to you some more after this meeting. So
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So I think the last little bit I want to talk about actually goes back to one of the first things that I talked about with Accenture. It has to do with the database management. So I just want to make sure that I heard this correctly. What I hear you telling me is if I enter in, say I have an employee, right? And for whatever reason, I'm entering in data and trying to work an email. I don't know what the hypothetical scenario is, but if I, for whatever reason, put that data into ChatGPT, that is now part of basically ChatGPT's domain, and they own that property of whether. So I would put this as a warning to anybody listening: be very careful what you put into these chatbots. I don't see that you have any more questions, so thank you for flying all the way to DC on a Friday. Apparently that's not a big thing around here, as I've learned. So have a safe trip home. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. So that concludes all our speakers for today. I just want to do a couple quick, we'll open this up for if there's any back and forth. Actually, I'll tell you what, we'll go ahead and do that first. So we have him back and forth. Anybody else want to make any comments prior to closing it up? Anyone? Bueller? Okay. So when we kick this off, AI, it sounds fun, but as you can see, the need to actually do a deep dive into this. I mean, this touches every aspect of our life. I actually, on one of the many pages I have here, I started going through how many industries and how many different facets of everyone's life this thing touches. And I think you could probably name, if I was to list, probably better to list things that it doesn't more than it does, because it basically is everything. It's an exciting time. This is actually an exciting thing. This isn't necessarily, it's not all bad, but with everything, emerging technologies, one thing I've learned is as a state legislator is it's not what you intend to do, it's what you didn't intend to do. and I think that needs to be kind of one of the big focuses of this as we move through the subcommittee. I think we need to I hate hearing we're 10 years behind on education. I hate hearing we're 10 years behind on everything. That's not my Georgia. That's not going to be our Georgia. I've deliberately not engaged too much with the other states and what they're doing to this point. That's going to change now after this meeting. I wanted all of us to kind of come in on a clean, everyone on the same slate. We're all talking the same language. Because, as much as I love the other states, I actually know we have the smartest and most capable individuals sitting in this room of anybody, of any state. I'll put us up against anybody. I'll put us up against DC too. But I think I wanted us to let everybody know. I specifically asked for certain individuals to be on this committee. All of you have very specific skill sets and things you bring to the table. It may be not necessarily AI, but it's somebody that's a strong policy person, like Rick over here, or Representative Kendrick. You've got a really good connections in the community, and those are all things I'm leaning heavily on all of you. This isn't just kind of us getting in here chatting for a little while and leaving with a smile on a Friday. This is I take this very seriously, and I know we have the right group. So I have no doubt that whatever we walk out of here with, it's going to be what everybody else in the country is saying. Hey, we need to do the way they did in Georgia. So that's the direction of the committee. And with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and we'll be adjourned. Thank you.